Welcome to Hockey With Talks podcast. In this podcast, I'll be talking about NHL storylines for the 24-25 season. In this podcast, I'll be talking about some storylines to watch out for heading into the 24-25 NHL season. The 24-25 NHL season could be filled with milestones. The most important one is Alex Ovechkin's pursuit of Wayne Gretzky's NHL goal record of 894 goals. The Penguin captain Sidney Crosby is closing in on 600 career NHL goals, while his teammate Evgeny Malkin is closing in on 500 career NHL goals. Both Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby are closing in on 1,600 career NHL points. Evgeny Malkin and Patrick Kane are both 16 points shy of 1,300 points, while Connor McDavid is closing in on the 1,000-point mark. Ryan Suter and Alex Ovechkin are both closing in on the 1,500 game mark, and there are at least 15 NHL players who can reach the 1,000 game mark. Sergei Bobrovsky and Jonathan Quick are both closing in on the 400 win mark. Bobrovsky has 396 wins and is just 4 games shy of that mark, while New York Rangers backup Jonathan Quick is just 7 games shy of that mark. Andrei Vasilevskiy and Connor Hellebuyck are within striking distance of 300 wins. Andrei Vasilevskiy is sitting at 286 wins, while reigning Vezina Trophy winner Connor Hellebuyck is 25 wins away. Frederik Andersen and Semyon Varlamov are also in the mix for 300 wins, with Varlamov 14 wins away and Andersen 5 wins away. Paul Maurice and Lindy Ruff are closing in on 900 career NHL wins. Paul Maurice of the Panthers is 31 wins away from 900 career wins, while Lindy Ruff needs 36 wins to have won 900 career wins. Marc-Andre Fleury's farewell tour. Amid speculation that he'd hang up the skates last spring, came the news that Fleury has signed on for one more season with the Wild, and that the 24-25 campaign would be his last. Fleury's NHL career started when he was selected first overall by the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2003, and it's only right that it should conclude with the season-long celebration of one of the game's best, not to mention one of the most beloved goaltenders. The 3-time Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the winner of the Vezina and Jennings in Vegas sits second only to Martin Brodeur in all-time wins with 561. He is on pace to finish his career second all-time in games played behind Brodeur, and he is just 4 shy right now of Waugh and 19 behind second place Roberto Luongo. Fleury's farewell tour will surely feature a few extra special stops, including his final game in Pittsburgh on October 29th and in Vegas on January 12th. And if his preseason hijinks are any indication, we can expect a final practical joke or two in there as well, from one of hockey's greatest top pranksters. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my scouting blog at hockeywith777scouting.com. Listen to my scouting blog podcast on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/hockeywith777scouting. Calder Trophy Race. There's a steady stream of young talent entering the NHL, and the 24-25 season promises a handful of highly anticipated debuts, headlined by first overall pick in 2024 Macklin Celebrini. The 18-year-old forward is the natural favorite to win the Calder Memorial Trophy as the season's top rookie, and is dealing with the early injury, but he's not alone this year when it comes to the race. And he's not alone on his own team even. Joining him in San Jose is fellow rookie forward Will Smith, as well as netminder Yaroslav Askarov, who was traded to the Sharks via Nashville this summer. Other intriguing rookies to watch out for include Philadelphia's Matvei Michkov, Dallas's Logan Stankoven, and Anaheim's Cutter Gauthier. This should be fun. Florida hockey is so hot right now. Between the Tampa Bay Lightning's trio of trips to the Stanley Cup Finals, including back-to-back championships in 2020 and 2021, and the Florida Panthers' Cinderella run in 2023, followed by the franchise's ever Stanley Cup victory this past spring, the Sunshine State has had a real stranglehold on the Stanley Cup final lately. The defending Stanley Cup champion Panthers saw some major names walk away in free agency, particularly on the blue line, with Brandon Montour leaving to sign with the Kraken and Oliver Ekman-Larsson leaving to sign with the Maple Leafs, and will need to rely on some more reclamation projects on defense to fill the gaps and run it back. Locking up leading goal scorer Sam Reinhart was a huge win, keeping a consistent forward core, the Panthers a formidable contender once again. Meanwhile, the Lightning looked different this year, especially at the top. GM Julien BriseBois was all business this offseason, letting longtime captain Steven Stamkos walk away and giving money to the younger winger in Jake Guentzel. He also traded away Mikhail Sergachev for another younger forward in Connor Geekie, sending a message to the league that the Lightning will stop at nothing to keep their window of contention open. Will the bold moves pay off? Which rebuilding roster can make the jump to the playoffs? Speaking of Florida, is there a division more fascinating than the Atlantic? It's not just about the teams above the fold. You know, the same four squads dominating the playoff picture for the past 6 years, or the fact that the division has represented in 6 straight cup finals and have won 3 of the last 5. The division is also home to the teams holding the NHL's 3 longest active postseason droughts, in the Buffalo Sabres with 13 seasons, Detroit Red Wings with 8 seasons, and Ottawa Senators with 7 seasons. All 3 enter the 24-25 campaign with playoff or bust expectations, and with Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston, and Toronto all looking as formidable as ever, as they look to maintain their status at the top, something's gotta give. The 82-game race looks like it'll be a marathon and a sprint, and with very little room for error. It should be a wild run all year long. Of course, while the Atlantic is out there looking like the hockey's version of the group of death, every division looks ripe for an upset when it comes to which club lands at the top. Can New Jersey bounce back and make good on playoff expectations at last? Will Nashville's shopping spree pay off? Can Connor Bedard bring the Blackhawks back to the playoffs? Can the Ducks or Sharks make a splash in the Pacific? Or could we see some changing of the guards as some rebuilding clubs aim at contention? Check out my hockey blog at hockeywiztalkshockey.blogspot.com. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at hockeywiz777. Welcome to the NHL Utah. It was the league's worst kept secret that Salt Lake City would someday be the home to an NHL franchise. We just weren't expecting it to happen so fast. But with Alex Marullo's inability to secure a viable long-term home hockey, now defunct Arizona Coyotes, came the news that the NHL is now in Utah. It had been an incredibly busy summer for everyone working behind the scenes to move an entire roster of players and staff members from one state to another. And there's so much more that has to be done still. For example, we still don't know the official team name or logo until the 24-25 season is in the books. While the roster itself is familiar, everything around it is new, including the fresh start. With a young group that looks like it's finally ready to contend, the Utah Hockey Club brings a new beginning for a team that hasn't had the luxury of just focusing on just hockey. What is the going rate for a starting goalie anyways? It was a busy summer for goaltenders, with a handful of starters joining new squads. Jacob Markstrom in New Jersey, Yaroslav Askarov in San Jose, and Jonas Korpisalo and Linus Ullmark trading creases between Boston and Ottawa. Others signed on the dotted lines to stay put, such as UC Saros in Nashville and Joseph Woll in Toronto, while stars Connor Hellebuyck and Ilya Sorokin signed long-term extensions last summer, embarking on year 1 of their respective new deals. But the big stories as we enter the season revolve around unresolved situations. In Boston, talks between Jeremy Swayman and Boston brass are unfolding and unraveling in a very public way after President Cam Neely's $64 million remarks. Will the netminder resign, or has he played his final game in Boston? Meanwhile, in New York, Rangers goalie Igor Shesterkin has his sights on raising the bar for goalie salary. But can the team afford it? And perhaps more importantly, Canada afford not to pay it? Shesterkin, who's due to become an unrestricted free agent next summer, reportedly doesn't want to negotiate a new deal during the season, which means New York's net should be in the spotlight all year. Best on Best International Hockey is back. What happens when you get Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid together on a line? That's a question we've been asking for an entire decade now. And with the return of International Best on Best Hockey this winter, we're finally going to get some answers. Beginning on February 12th, entries from 4 top hockey countries, Canada, the US, Sweden, and Finland, will battle for hockey supremacy in Montreal and Boston in the 2025 Four Nations Face-Off. This will be the first time since the league revived its World Cup of Hockey in 2016 that we see top-tier international competition. It also marks the beginning of NHLers representing their country, as the NHL, NHLPA, and IIHF agreed in February that the league will allow its players to compete in the Olympic Games in 2026 and 2030 for the first time since 2014. Listen to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast on Podbean and Spotify. Check out my travel channel at youtube.com/HockeyWizTravels. We all know the heavy expectations placed on hockey teams in Canadian markets, but considering how close McDavid and company came to finally winning it all last spring, is there a team with a brighter spotlight shining on them than the Edmonton Oilers? The roster remains largely intact, with Leon Draisaitl committing long-term and sending a message to his teammates in Edmonton it is in the position to win. We all know this season really comes down to Game 83 and beyond, and seeing Florida bounce back from 2023 runners-up to 2024 champions. All we want to know is whether Edmonton can do the same. Can the Oilers run it back and win it this time? In my next podcast, I'll be talking about top Stanley Cup contenders.